Call the regular council meeting of Monday, May the 5th to order. We do have one late item. That's a presentation to, I'm asking that the report from the Manager of Communications, Engagement and Social Development with regards to the Japanese Canadian Legacy Project be pulled from the consent agenda and placed on the agenda as item number 6C. And there will be a presentation with that. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Can I have a motion to accept the agenda? Councillors Adey and Randawa, is there any other deletions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. I'll note that Councillors Forster and Skelton Morven are joining us remotely. Is Councillor Niche there as well?
He is online, yes.
Okay, and Councillor Niche as well, just not showing up on the screen right now. Thank you very much. All right, the agenda is approved. This is now an opportunity for members of the public to come forward and speak to council with regards to any item that is coming up on the agenda. I invite any member of the public who wants to speak at this time. I know that you're interested. Come sit right in the middle chair. You got to talk over that broken water pipe. Very purposeful. Slows you down from asking for too much more money. Push that button once. Yep. And now your mic is hot. Introduce yourself and speak away.
Okay, I'm Keith Kochani. I'm president of the International Longshore Warehouse Union Local 505 in Prince Rupert, representing longshore workers. We heard about an hour ago that there's a bylaw moving to restrict the services that the port of, or the city of Prince Rupert provides the port. So with very little preparation, I guess I just want to express that I spend my entire career, my job here, advocating for the safety of workers. So we understand that fire services and everything need to be funded properly. We would hope that we wouldn't see any disruption in these services if there's some politics going on as to how things are paid for. I noticed there's been talk of things like high angle rescue. That's something we've been pushing our employers towards doing within our own facility and having people trained for it. Maybe we can expedite that. But right now we're at a time where shipping and shipping schedules are incredibly uncertain. Our industry is under incredible pressure. Ports in Seattle and Tacoma are virtually shut down. Our bosses, whom we struggle with a lot of the time, are working very hard to keep our people working. It is the number one industry in this town. It employs more people than virtually anything else. And we really don't want to kick this industry in the teeth right when we're at a very weak point. The Costco shipping has stopped scheduling ships for the last half of the month. It's being made up for by other carriers, but what's next month is going to look like, I don't know. So I hope you're mindful of the economic effect of anything you do right now. Well, these companies do have a lot of money, but this industry with the Trump tariffs is very in a very precarious position. So do consider us when you're making decisions. And as I wish I had a little bit more prep on this, I could probably express more opinions on the specifics of what you're talking about. This is an issue that we talk about regularly with our employers, and we've been working on for years. So, if we had been spoken to, we could have perhaps given you some insight on where we've been on it and where we're hoping to get on it. But hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that as this process continues. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I can assure you that there will be more opportunity to speak to council on the matter as things proceed. Is there any other member of the public or come on forward? Same thing, hit the button once. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillors. My name is Will Pedersen. I'm the Director of Operations at the Port Authority. And I'm here on behalf of the Port Authority I want to start by expressing our appreciation for the level of collaboration between the city and the Port Authority on a number of fronts. Emergency response is one area in particular where we have been in close conversation for some time about how we can work together to improve response capabilities for both industry and community alike. And as referenced in the report from the fire chief on the agenda this evening, PRPA and the city have been exploring opportunities to further development of an emergency response facility aimed at increasing capacity and capability for the mutual benefit of all. But it is this close collaboration that brings us to this evening's council meeting. As you may have read in a letter submitted to the city council earlier this afternoon, PRPA is raising concerns with the process and potential impacts of the proposed amendments to bylaw 1944, I believe. Sorry, I don't have that in my notes here. In particular, language around exempt lands, a lack of clarity on core services, and concerns related to the discretion of services are all issues that, in our view, require additional review and input by those impacted. Considering that PRPA is specifically identified in the proposed bylaw and the potential impacts to our terminals, tenants, and workforce, we strongly urge the council to further engage with said stakeholders to further assess these proposals and find a mutually beneficial path forward. Given the limited opportunity to review up until this point and the potential implications of these changes, we request that council postpone the third reading to allow city staff to conduct further engagement and review. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other member of the public?
Thank you, Your Worship and fellow councillors. My name is Craig Ollie. I'm the president of Trigon Pacific Terminals on Ridley Island. And like the previous two speakers, it's with regards to bylaw 2944 that Trigon also does not agree with. In general, Trigon is a significant taxpayer, and we oppose the city's intention to stop providing fire control services to Trigon and more broadly the M3 industrial lands. A couple of points I wanted to bring up with respect to the gap that was identified in the bylaw and the proposed resolution that the fire department not responding to industrial sites within the tax base for a range of events, and particularly industrial fires. You know, in the event of a response by the fire department to any incident, the department is fully trained and in its rights to respond in a manner that benefits the capabilities and equipment of its members attending. Trigon supports specific industrial site familiarity for layout, resources, and potential response requirements for familiarity, awareness, and training, and has conducted its operations accordingly to the fire department. Failing to respond and allowing an injured employee and resident of Rupert to suffer, we are sure is totally unacceptable to the council and the community. No bylaw is needed to enforce the fire department's ability to assess response and choose an appropriate action. Like the previous two speakers before me, we're also asking for the third reading not to go forward, that it does feel like it's been rushed extremely quickly. We were made aware of this today, and of course caught us off guard. Certainly aware of the work that was being done with the city and the PRPA, but the fact that to withhold services, including medical assistance for an ambulance to a struggling employee, or to let a large multi-million-dollar asset burn to the ground because services are withheld, is something that we cannot sit quietly and let slide by. So I know there's lots of other inputs. I know we're limited to time, but we strongly oppose this amended bylaw to go through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other member of the public? Doesn't have to be on this bylaw. Just as long as it's on the council's agenda tonight. Nobody's moving? Okay, well, thank you very much to all the speakers that did come forward. What makes me want to wax eloquent about democracy? I love the process, and I love the fact that you came out and expressed yourself. You are more than welcome to stay for as long as you want in the meeting. but nobody gets offended if you walk out partway through, because the business that you were here to take care of is already done. Believe me, none of us go home crying because somebody walked out of the council chamber. But thank you for coming. All right. With that, council, we'll move on. There is a consent agenda in there. As I've said, we've pulled item number B and the reports for receipt, item number 5. But there are council minutes for approval, the minutes of the special regular meeting of April 24th, the minutes of the regular meeting of April 28th, the minutes of the committee of the whole of April 28th. There's a report from the deputy city manager with regards to the SWANA award. There's correspondence for approval request for proclamation of Wild Salmon Day 2025. There's correspondence for receipt, which is NCLGA member webinar about bridging gaps in care, and a letter from the village of Telkwa to the Premier and BC Utilities Commission calling for a comprehensive reset of Pacific Northern Gas and an audit of the organization's operations. Recommendation is that all of the consent agenda items be approved or received as requested. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors, we'll go to the screen. We'll go Councillor Skelton-Morven and Councillor Forster. All right. Anything there you want to highlight? Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, what I'd like to bring to council and people's attention is the correspondence for receipt letter from the village of Telkwa to the Premier and BC Utilities Commission. Recall for comprehensive reset of Pacific Northern Gas and an audit of the organization's operations and expenditures. We just had the carbon tax removed from PGA bills. Everyone smiled and said, oh boy, we're going to get a little reduction in our PNG. And within a day or two, PNG turned around and said, we're going to up the delivery charges, which if you go back, which I unfortunately did today, and realize the delivery charge has gone up over $5 in the last 3 years. You know, I've got a commodity charge of $55 and a delivery charge of 300 and something. You know, I think, I don't think I would like this council to send a letter along to the Premier and the BCUC mimicking both what Kitimat, Burns Lake, and Telkwa are all asking, is that we take a look at PNG and why they're charging so much for a delivery charge. You know, they are part of another larger company called Tri-Summit that makes a pretty dollar off their operations. And so whether they're moving money around or not, I don't know, but I think an audit would be nice to have. And the BC Utilities Commission can take a look at, rather than just rubber stamping another increase. And the people of the Pacific Northwest are just getting fed up with these increases. So that's my 2 bits worth.
All right. What we'll do is we'll continue through the consent agenda, and after we approve the consent agenda, I'll look for a motion as you've outlined. Anyone else want to? Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight the BC Rural Health Network invitation to participate. In my other role, wearing my other hat, I do a fair bit of work with Paul Adams and this group, and I think being a rural community ourselves, it will bring a lot of good information about how we can advocate for better services for our community. So I encourage everybody to take the time to take that course.
Excellent. I also wanted to draw attention to the SWANA Award, and maybe have a comment. Dr. Buchan, you want to mention DCM Pucci? You want to talk about the SWANA Award?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on April 24th, we received the Solid Waste Association of North America's SWANA Award, and it was for Most Improved Landfill. We're really pleased about this because we've been working really hard at our landfill. We've invested a lot of money in it in the past couple of years, as council is aware, and we've come a long way over the last year or two. We did receive some fines, but those were actively happening over the last couple of years, so we're happy to come out of that process with an award. We've really put in some hard work, and thank you to the staff for that.
Maybe the next time somebody threatens to fine us, we can hold up our award and intervene. Anything else you want to comment on within the consent agenda? All, yeah, it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Councillor Cunningham, I'd entertain your motion.
The motion would be to write a letter to the Premier as well as BCUC in support of other communities, or we can actually just mimic Telqua or anyone else's.
Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Randhawa. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Moving on, we are at reports. We have a report from the fire chief with a recommendation that council consider the new fire control and protection bylaw number 2944. Given the amount of interest in the subject in the room, the meeting is divided into two parts. One is the report, and then secondly, after that, we'll follow the bylaws where we actually consider the bylaw itself. Okay, so we have a report. Recommendation is the council consider the new fire control and protection bylaw number 2944. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Adey. Discussion. Dr. Buchan, I'm going to, given this circumstance, I would like to actually have staff sort of report on that. So I put it into your hands.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will ask the fire chief to come up to speak to the report and the bylaw. I'd also like to note that we are planning to have public information on our website as well as an engagement hopefully in June on this for the community to get more information. And I will preface the chief's remarks by saying the bylaw is very much about actually putting in a framework and structure so that we can improve service. It's not about restricting service. That's not the intent. So, Chief.
Chief Beckwith.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. Yeah, as a summary for the report, we had a few, although the bylaw is, it seems like it is going to take a lot of focus on one topic. There are also other topics within the bylaw that are being presented to help align the city's position with other legislation. But I'll speak on the whole report. We conducted this. We started this this path a couple years ago, looking at where the city's fire protection capabilities are, and then that was one word that came out recently, just tonight, was restriction. And I don't think that this was ever focused on the idea of restrictions. It was about what can we provide to our community as far as fire protection, and what are our capabilities within our means, and to make sure that everybody knows that we're here to provide a great service for our citizens and for our community partners, but we can only operate within the means that we have, and to make sure that that's clear, so that the expectations when we go to large events is not misunderstood. This bylaw will create a pathway for us to identify our gaps and hopefully create a route for us to get to better services in specialized areas that have been identified.
Council.
Your Worship, if I may add just a bit more.
Dr. Buck.
A little more background on what we've been doing on this over the last few years. We've been actively working on actually finding a new site for a new fire hall. An expanded fire hall with expanded service, with the intent of increasing service response levels to our industrial lands and in particular port lands. That's been work that we've been doing collaboratively with the PRPA, and the intent behind that was basically to have a funding partnership for the new facility, as well as the increased capacity, capabilities, and staffing in order to get us up to the level of service that we should be. Not where we are. The bylaw recognizes where we are. The fire chief will respond where and when he can, without putting the community and his crew at risk. we need to have more equipment, a new facility, and more people in order to meet the demand for that level of service that industry wants. So that's what this is about. It's about laying out a framework for that agreement that we've been discussing for the last few years with the PRPA as well as the location. So we're actively engaged in the location and finding a design for that location.
Thank you. Chief Beckwith, the number of concerns raised tonight, you heard them. I won't get them all, and I'll rely on council but you know, there's a number of people here from labor who go to work every day in situations where high rescue may be required. I picked that as just one topic, but confined space rescue is another area. And I think there's been a little bit of a wake-up call in the community in that those are capabilities you don't currently have. Is that correct?
We are trained to confined space
Okay.
Technician level. So we actually just finished a course this past week, running our second. This is an annual review on that. So we do offer confined space. This past spring, we were awarded through the BC CSA THARP program, which is the Technical High Angle Rope Rescue Program. We were awarded membership into there, which is going to include training of 4 instructors to technical high angle rescue, and a small stipend to $11,000 stipend to equip the department in high angle rescue equipment. Maybe I say small because that will give us a start, but it is it may not be the full amount needed in order to consider large rescues at some of the properties in our community. So it'll fund a portion of it.
Okay.
Currently, we do not offer high angle rope rescue.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
So the courses that you're putting on right now, they're being initiated by the city and the fire department?
Chief Beckwith.
And
Councillor,
oh, sorry, yeah.
I encourage you to talk.
Yeah. I forgot about that. So that question is directed to Chief.
Chief Beckwith.
Your Worship, yes, our courses are funded. Both confined space was funded by the city, and the Technical High Angle Rescue Program is going to be funded by the BC Construction Safety Alliance.
Councillor Cunningham.
So I find it rather interesting that we have this industrial complex and people's lives are at risk to a certain degree because we don't have the services that is needed to provide rescue. I don't ever see an ambulance not appearing if somebody's injured, like Trigon said. You know, ambulance is not a city function, it's a EMS or the province. They go anywhere. But you know, that point being made, but I find it rather interesting that the city has initiated some of this training on their own, but we've been sitting talking to the port for years about it, and at the same time during these discussions, people's lives are at risk. I think it's time for us to put a lot of the things aside and sit down and get this done now, not tomorrow or the next week or the next month, but now, because, you know, PRPA is a very intricate part of this city, just like Keith said. And I think with the workers down there, including my son, you know, they're at risk every day. It's not a safe place to work, and everyone looks out for everyone else, but it is a dangerous environment. It's inherently dangerous, and they've got to go do these jobs. So I really think the city's taken the initiative to put on some courses. I think PRPA has to sit down with the city and say, okay, we'll start helping you finance or buy equipment or do whatever. But I think it's got to be a joint effort, and the city's already put an olive branch out there to start it. So I think it should be done immediately, not in a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
Thank you. Councillor Skelton Morven.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the key word in a lot of the discussions here is that years that these have been in discussion, and to see the rapid response for folks to come and almost reframe this into a thing that now become is as a non-existent political thing where, you know, this isn't what this is about. There's a big piece about this as liability, you know, and looking at that is that, you know, we've had these conversations for years. They've gone nowhere. You know, like in my other capacities working with some of these organizations, like, you know, not to mention one of the most ridiculous letters I've ever read in my life of just not funding something. And it just speaks volumes to see that, you know, when to preach and pray and proud about, you know, lives are at stake. It's like, great, we've all been in conversation about this for years, you know, and it's like this is more than enough time to come up with a solution, the means, the funds. Yeah, the timing is not ideal, but at this point in time, it's almost an expectation that we're just going to put our firefighters at risk to the level of capacity that they don't have, you know, and this has been something that just goes in circles and circles and a multitude of different topics between organizations. And just for me, it's just, you know, 6 years of this really for me, and just watching it go nowhere and just how fast we can respond and throw together right now. But now that the conversation has been happening for years, let's just make it happen, guys. Like, this is unreal. Like, for a municipality our size, for a community that's so tight knit, and there's no real excuse for us to not cross paths and collaborate and make it work. Just make it happen, guys. This is unreal.
Any other comments from council? Questions? Councillor Adey.
I guess I'll comment on the part of this that I would be disturbed by if I had been living life in the community and maybe not tuned into every council meeting or whatever. And maybe I'll frame it in the form of a couple of hypothetical questions for Chief Beckwith. And then I'll comment. I guess I would ask, a month ago, if there was a major fire at one of the port facilities, what would have happened in regards to the response we would have been able to give it? And then I would ask supplementally, if we were to pass this bylaw as it stands, go through the 3 readings tonight and a month from now, pass the 4th reading, and 2 weeks after that, the same fire occurred at the same facility, would there be any tangible difference between the response in the first instance to the response in the second instance?
Chief Beckwith.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're bound to respond to our capacity and our capabilities, and so it's hard to visualize maybe an event because every event is going to be different. But certainly, the response that we have now may not be sufficient for what the event you're describing would be, and that's what we've seen in the past. Is that we just simply are outgunned when it comes to working large events. And the difference of this document now is that we've identified that we have gaps. And so moving forward, it'd be nice to say, if we have future events, how are we going to manage those? And what do we need in order to do that effectively and efficiently? I can tell you from the membership's perspective, they are very passionate about the job they do. They're very committed to the safety of this community. And there's huge interest to keep our citizens safe. But ultimately, when we are not trained or equipped to do a job sufficiently, then it puts our members at risk because they're operating in areas or in areas of exposure that they're not prepared for.
Councillor Adey. And I've got a list, so I've got you on.
So I take from that, I'm not hearing a difference, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not hearing a difference between the before and the after based on this bylaw alone. But the point I'd like to make about that is that there likely is and understandably so, a level of frustration and anger to discover that there never has been adequate protection or adequate capacity to respond to an incident of that kind. And Councillor Skelton Moran has expressed the frustration of that. And I share that, but we're here today, and what we need to do is fix it. And what I'm hearing is that in the next couple of months, there likely isn't going to be, similarly, there isn't going to be the capacity to respond adequately to an event of that kind. So that's not acceptable. But we also live in a town of 13,000 people supporting the third largest port in Canada. It's a big show, and we are a small community. So I think that, and I trust that nobody in the room is suggesting that it's all on the city, because we can't. The mismatch is too obvious. So the call is, let's get on with it and get to where we've got it covered as best you can. And these events are, these catastrophic events are likely going to be beyond response time in some ways anyway. So I would suggest that if there is a silver lining in an obviously difficult subject that's got, a bunch of people in the room with concerns that are valid, then let's see it as a silver lining that everybody gets it. That this needs to move forward, and if this document does that, produces that forward motion, then that's probably a good thing.
Thank you. Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, yeah, I want to reinforce that this is about saying that status quo is not sufficient, and recognizing that the lack of capabilities in some areas and moving forward. So the bylaw is a part of improving things, and I don't want it to be left thought that we haven't been active on this. We've been working collaboratively with the PRPA on location and design. As a matter of fact, we had a location and got to a design and found that that particular location was more expensive than either of us could contemplate. So we are now to a new location, and we hopefully this year we can get to design so we can get costed out and the agreements in place. The bylaw puts forward the framework for us to do the agreements. It's about moving forward to improve service fundamentally.
I'm going to rephrase and direct to you, Dr. Buchan, Councillor Adie's second question, which is incident today, incident after the bylaw is passed. If I'm at Prince Rupert Grain and the incident is such that we have the capacity to respond today, bylaw passes, what happens after? If we have the capacity to respond.
Exactly the same response. What we're trying to do is to get beyond that same response.
So there's no red circle that says thou shalt not.
No. That is, there's no withdrawal of service. What we're doing basically for federal lands is saying service agreements allows us to get to the cost sharing concept that we have been discussing with the PRPA.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going down the list. Cunningham, Councillor Cunningham will come back to you, but everybody gets a first crack. All right. Councillor Nish, you are next.
Hello there. Yeah, I mean, I find this is kind of the way it always goes when something gets picked out by the public as to, and then a big response by everyone showing up at a council meeting. And I think it's great that for whatever reason, this particular evening, we had a flurry of emails in the last hour here, and I even had a phone call there 10 minutes before this meeting about this. And for whatever reason, it something raised something to someone tonight that it started this, and I think it's a great piece because what it's going to do is it's going to really open the eyes to the public as to what we do need, because you look at the pulp mill as an example. And the pulp mill, they served themselves with their own fire hall and had the training and the needs that they required. And now all of our industries don't have that. I mean, every industry we have now, they're relying on our essentially small residential fire service to respond to industrial businesses, which they can to a certain extent, but definitely not to the level that we need. And so it's great to see that everyone showed up tonight, because for whatever reason it sparked it tonight, and I think this will open some eyes, and hopefully we can kind of come to a solution as to where this money and how this is going to get done and how we're going to get this into our community. Like was mentioned by Councillor Adey about being the third largest port in the country. If we had a proper tax base and supports from the industries to be able to supply these services, it would be amazing. And that's what it always comes down to. We're just a small town, but we're a world port, and we need help from other places, whether that's provincial government, federal government, industries, everybody, to be able to put money in the pot to be able to provide the services, whether that's a fire service or a water line in the road or the streets we drive on. Everything that we do, we're supposed to be a world port here, and we need to work on that. So, yeah, I mean, as long as the answers I've got is that no responses are going to change from our current situation. So it's basically updating a bylaw, and from there we can hopefully continue the conversations that we have been having with the Port Authority and other people about making this happen.
Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, just two points to make. Council's strategic plan, which is a public-facing document, has two strategic actions identified in it that are relevant to this issue. First one calls for the bylaw to be updated, which is what's presented, and the second is to build a new fire hall facility. So this is squarely in Council's strategic plan, and staff have been working on it, and this is the next step forward.
Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, mostly other councillors already said. So seems like there's a gap of information on community side and our bylaw. So my question is do we need to go all three readings tonight, or we can go with two, and so people can have more time to engage with this one?
So it was suggested earlier, and it's something actually I talked to staff about already. My suggestion when we get to that is that we do first and second reading only. It allows us more time. We're not in a rush to get through this. We want to make sure people are well engaged. And so first and second reading puts it on the table, but leaves it open to be commented on, changed, whatever. Does that help? Councillor Cunningham.
So the way I see it right now, we've got everyone in the room here that's concerned. We do first and second reading tonight, leave it open, and Chief Beckworth either puts together a small task force or something like that from industry with their own concerns, and we do it immediately. It's not just PRPA that's involved in this, it's DP World, it's everyone. Yeah. Everyone that's a player in this. And if we get them involved, identify the shortcomings and do something about it, and I think getting everyone in the room at the same time, we're going to find the shortcomings and find ways to address them, so that with the fire department and that will there to lead the charge, we can get this done. It's just a matter of the right people being in the room at the right time to address it.
Yeah. An observation I would make is that our community, particularly on the industrial side, has changed immensely in the last several decades, right? We had a fire hall that was built to protect a town of 18,000, 19,000 people, and respond to fish plant fires, which were all right here on our waterfront, right? And we have moved almost completely away from fish plants, and we've moved into containers, and we moved into propane facilities, and yeah, we had the coal and the grain before, but the nature of our industry has changed tremendously, and it is time for us to address it. Councillor Skelton Morvan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to start off by thanking Councillor Adie for being my anger translator. But I'll wrap this up with just some perspective and lessons while I've been located down here in the Lower Mainland for this short-term contract. Now you see Granville post the tragedy at the festival. They now have cinder blockades and police set up so that this doesn't happen again. I'd hate to see us finally learn our lesson through a pain point and tragedy where there's a massive loss of life of workers and first responders because we do not have the capacities to meet those needs. Just something as simple as what these solutions have been implemented down here. I think the fact that these things have been talked about, it's there. Industrial tragedies happen, and we are not immune to them. And I think that it's just a matter of time before something happens while we're still in negotiating and planning and things like that. And not to say that the city hasn't done its part, and I know the staff have worked really, really hard just to meet now some new tones of collaboration, which has been great. But the first few years, it was not necessarily the tone. And I just, again, can't really express much other than frustration around it because it's all, like I said, it's only a matter of time. And I think for us to be prepared for that is going to be really critical.
Thank you. Council, I think I'll call for your vote. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you, Chief Beckwith. We also now have a report from the Director of Transportation Economic Development with regards to the Cow Bay Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3662. Recommendation that Council consider the Cow Bay Marina Fees and Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 3662. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Randawa and Councillor Adie. All right. I'll invite the director and the manager forward. Again, I normally let reports speak for themselves, but there's been a lot of questions from council prior in the prior meeting, as well as questions from members of the public. And so I think it would be well served to try to address as many of those as we can with direct response from the two of you. But Dr. Buchan, did you want to lead this off?
Your Worship, I'll just ask staff to give a presentation on how they arrived at the report and the bylaw.
Director Vindatelli.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here as the overseer of the marina. A big part of getting it built back in 2014 and 15. And I'm going to defer to the actual rates to the marina manager here, Robin, but I'm here to bring context to the marina. This was built as an itinerant marina, as many as 1,100 boats a year heading to and from Alaska with nowhere to stop. And so the funding was put together with Western Economic Diversification, a bunch of other funding partners, and then we built the marina for its sole purpose was to capture that traffic to and from Alaska, from Washington, Oregon, Vancouver, and California. So then during the COVID phase, we opened up the marina to take a few more of commercial sports fishermen, because at the time, as we were coming out of COVID and things were starting to open up, it was encouraged that things like outdoor activities, golf and fishing, be embraced. And so we took on some sport fishermen, commercial operations to try to help stimulate some economy in town. And so where we are today is we are looking to increase the fees at the marina to stay more in line with the rest of the province, and Manager Robin will speak to that. And that's how we got to where we are today. So if that covers the overview, I'll turn it over to Robin.
I don't know what I can add to the report. Maybe I can address some of the questions that you have,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. before I just ramble on forever about my research.
Well, I mean, you spoke. So one of the questions was, the comparison to other marinas, and I know that you separate out those marinas into different categories, and maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Marinas across the province, there's a lot of different focuses that they can have. A couple quick examples are like commercial fishing fleets, industrial facilities. There's sport fishing facilities. There's annual moorage. A lot of yacht clubs are this sort of thing, and harbor. A lot of city marinas are actually focused on annual moorage. They want to fill them with annual moorage. Approximately 10 to 15% are tourism focused, and some of that's loosely interpreted. By that I mean they seek out itinerant traffic during the summer travel season. So a lot of the considerations for the rates investigation that was done is to establish how to best manage the peak summer months of like June, July, and August. It's also May and September. The heel months are also quite high volume, but they typically, we balance them out. But during the peak part of the season, it gets quite complicated. And so as the marina is established for the purpose of itinerant traffic, like that was what its focus and priority mandate was through funding and agreements with Western Economic Development. We've always had to try to make sure there is a sufficient amount of space to meet that demand. And as Director Vincitelli said, it's between 1,000 and 1,100 visits north and south. So that's about somewhere between 500 and 600 boats that travel north, and you get them on their return trip south. They start anywhere from about Seattle, Vancouver, Victoria. They travel up to Southeast Alaska. They spend the bulk of their summer, and they return in August, usually wanting to be back down in their home marinas by September long weekend. So hopefully that answers your question.
So those fees. So I mean, there's a difference between a municipal marina that's set up for local people to put their boats in the water versus those marinas that are set up specifically to handle tourism type 1 night, 3 nights, 5 nights passing through, right? When you look at the proposed bylaw and the fees proposed, how do we stack up amongst those tourism focused facilities?
Okay, well, if I were only comparing to tourism focused marinas, our transient moorage rates are well under the average. But the rate proposal that's coming before council is actually just to put us in the middle of all marinas on the coast. And so the investigation included 57 marinas with online searches for their stuff, and 32 of those, there were phone conversations to speak to them about how their operations work, what nuances there are, so policies around that. In there's everything from some marinas have discounts for commercial, others have surcharges for commercial boats. Some don't take reservation. Well, most don't take reservations. Some do take reservations, and we do take reservations, which is actually probably only about a third of the marinas really take an honest reservation. Most of them just put wait lists together. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Yeah,
We're in the middle.
Yeah. So the rates. We took an examination of all the daily rates across the province, and then we met right in the middle, which includes everything from facilities like Rushbrook or the old government docks, which across the province focus more on the commercial fishing fleets and commercial operations industry. They usually have tugboats, and I mean, if you go to Fairview, you see exactly what's down there. And so there's a lot of facilities that are built around that, and we included their rates. And then you've got the bulk of marinas, which are much more like the Prince Rupert Rowing Yacht Club. And by that, I mean they often have a membership, but more specifically, their goal is to fill their marina with annual, usually locals, that will have their boats in the marina year round and paying year round rates. So that's, we included them, and then the tourism ones. And so tourism, out of 57 marinas, the rates that are proposed are the average, which means that there's roughly 26 that are below that you will find on an easy look online, but then there's also 26 that are above that. Of the ones above that, almost all tourism focused ones are in the above our rates. It's actually an important thing to keep in mind that in trying to meet a hybrid program of balancing itinerant with our annual and our sport fishing community, we've kept our itinerant rates a little bit below the average, but like for tourism focused marinas.
There was a question, I think, last time about why only 40, like why do I have to rent a 40-foot slip?
Yes. So paying for a full slip is the industry standard. I mean, you'll be hard pressed if you go around the province to find marinas that don't charge you for the full slip. If you're on a long dock, this is like Rushbrook or the breakwater at the marina, you pay for your boat. Like if it's a 25-foot boat, you pay for that length, and then there's usually about a 5-foot space in between, and another boat goes in behind. A 40-foot slip, if you got a 25-foot boat, that you're paying, it's like having a hotel room. It has 2 beds in it. You only want one. You tell the hotel you don't want to pay for the second bed, they don't give you a discount. Okay. So it's essentially that is an industry standard.
There was a question raised about commercial rates at the marina.
Yeah, one of the questions was like who's receiving commercial rates or why there is no commercial rates. So right now there's no commercial rate in the marina. Every client pays the exact same rate schedule. There's no discounted groups. The closest to a discount is your annuals. They pay for 12 months and they're getting a break during those peak summer months as a result of that. We don't have a commercial rate because we're not competing with Rushbrook for commercial traffic. There's other facilities for commercial operators to focus on. Cow Bay Marina's tourism focus means we don't need to draw that traffic in. It's just like the annual traffic. We're not trying to fill the marina with annual traffic. Annual people have the yacht club, or they can go over to Rushbrook, and their services are met. We're trying to meet a clientele of boaters that don't have another option in Prince Rupert.
How do the hours at the marina in Prince Rupert compare to other?
This gets so the hours change through the season because we have a lot of differing time frames. Typically we have much longer hours than the marina, but it's also expanded because I'm on call all summer, and which means I'm down there at 9 o'clock at night as often as I'm not. So the hours, most marinas will be somewhere between 7:30, 8 o'clock starts and 4 o'clock end of day. So that 8-hour shift with a lunch break in there. Cow Bay Marina usually through the summer will start somewhere between 6 and 7 o'clock, and we go until 6 or 8 o'clock at night, depending on what part of the season it is.
Council, I'm sure you have questions. I was just trying to short circuit to try to get some of the answers from the past. Councillor Anish.
Hi there. Well, first I'll acknowledge that, when we did build this marina years ago, it was for itinerant travel.
Well, Councillor, we're losing you.
The local traffic. But that being said, as time went on I'll shut my camera off here. Maybe that'll help. So, you know, as time went on, we invited in more local people to this dock, and they've set up their businesses to, you know, that was some people in to use this dock. Like, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of these people that are currently raising a concern with the new bylaws is because during the summer months, the 3 months of the summer, they would now have to pay a day rate versus a monthly rate. But when they pay it, they're paying for the year. So they're actually they're paying for the year, but they're paying a monthly rate. But now with the new bylaws, they would not get that monthly rate for the summer. So, you know, and it doesn't sound like there's that very many of them, but with the extra money that would be collected from more itinerant traffic, if we didn't have those guys in there, would that make up the difference for the fact that these people are renting the service for the year? So, you know, I'm wondering is there somewhat of a middle ground where you know, maybe we offer a certain amount of spots, whether it be half a dozen or spots that are available to, because it sounds like there's only about 10 guys in there. You know, is that a possibility? And does the income make up the difference that if these guys all of a sudden disappear from January to June, and they're not paying during our slow times, is the difference that we're going to make up for that in higher rates of itinerant traffic? Is that going to make up for those losses if those guys decide to go to another dock for the year?
Okay, I think between you're a little bit scrambled, but I think we've got the gist of it. You started by saying it was originally built for itinerants, and then over time we've had some charter boat operators in there. Director Vindatelli, can you just talk about that piece of history? How did we come from a facility that was built specifically for itinerants, and now we have a number of charter operators?
Yeah, along the way, we did reach out to the funding partners and ask if we could allocate so many slips, a percentage of them, to a longer year, you know, aboard, just to have some guaranteed revenue through the slower winter months. And so they approved that and said that was fine, that we could have a percentage of slips in that category. So that's how we got to that.
So the fees, Councillor Niche is asking, you know, how does it balance out? So if somebody is in there, like I think quite a number of them are April through to whatever. But just recalling from the conversation last week, some may be from January right through. How does that compare to that block of time in the summer, June to end of August, and what its potential earning capacity is? Where's the trade-off in that?
I'll get Robin to touch on that, but I do know that our peak season is those 4 or 5 months through the summer, and charging rates that are just by the foot will generate more revenue for the marina.
By the day, not
by the day. Yeah, per foot per day, and that's what a lot of marinas do through the summer months. To generate, it's typical economics, right? Supply and demand. There's a big demand.
Put some sort of number to that?
Yeah. So, Robin, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can try to provide a little bit of information on that. So what Paul was talking about is the 10 annuals that we have, and the question Councillor Niche asked was about the charters doing annual and then paying extra rates during the summer.
So I think he was comparing. So we have only 10 annuals?
Correct.
Okay, so there's only 10 available. So why don't you explain that real quick? Because I don't know that counts perhaps that.
Yeah. So the marina rate now breaks down like we have 10. So there's approximately 55 boats can be in the marina on any given day at any given time. And 10 spaces of that, so roughly a little bit less than 20%, are allocated to annual moorage agreements. They've been 100% full ever since we started those back in 2016.
And how do I get one of those?
You're on a very long wait list.
Okay.
I have right now, I've got, can't remember off the top of my head, 8 or 10 on the wait list right now, plus people that ask periodically that just don't get put on there because they just don't open up.
Yeah.
Maybe one a year will open up,
okay.
But it's not common because once you're in, you don't want to leave. Yeah. So roughly 10 of those 55 spaces will be allocated to annual. Right now, roughly 10 are dedicated to, or sorry, I'll take a step back. So 3 more are for short term. This is where the monthly agreements typically come into. They can be, we expand that so that they're filling the place during the winter, but during the summer, they're still paying the day-to-day rates. Because if they're not in there, that's what we're earning. Because the itinerant traffic keeps the marina at about 80 to 85% full, and then the other 15 to 20% of available spaces end up being like sport fishing boats, private recreational boats, and that kind of stuff. And of that group, that transient group, about 22 of the 55 spaces, so about a little bit less than half, we dedicate those to reservations that are like up to 7 days. This is your peak transient group. They'll be in there for 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, 5 nights, that sort of thing. And that ends up being through the summer months about 90-95% full. That space that is dedicated to that group. We have 6 to 8 that are for like up to 2 weeks. This is your private sport fishing boats that just do a week, like a 2-week summer vacation fishing in Prince Rupert.
They're paying daily.
They are paying day to day again.
Yeah.
And then there's another 10 to 12 boats that end up being in there for the full summer, and they're also paying day to day rates. We keep that many spaces open for whatever purposes. If somebody wants to be there longer than 2 weeks, that they're in that group. And that's how we allocate our reservation space, so that we don't only fill the marina with sport fishing boats and all that, because they can plan their holidays in January, but the transient community won't necessarily know more than about 3 weeks ahead of time where they're going to be.
So I think Councillor Naish was still looking at the value to the city of Prince Rupert of leaving those spaces available for those summer months versus, but not having January, February, whatever. But,
yeah.
What's the difference in the value to the community?
My apologies, I did not answer your question. You're right.
No.
So the charters in particular that we were talking about, there was a comment made that they're in for the year. We not typically. Historically, if we were going to be offering short-term moorage through the summer months, it was meant to service people who were wintering their boats with us, because we get transients that park their boat for the winter, just get a head start on their Southeast Alaska in Prince Rupert, and they're the reason we had short-term moorage during the summer months. So if they didn't come and get into their boat until the end of June, we don't want them to have to pay day to day because they already paid for the whole winter. So we gave them a discount on the month of June, July, or August, depending on whether they started early or left late. The charter boats, starting in about April, the long ones are in there from early April till late September. This is usually about 3 or 4 of the boats. And then the rest of them just show up for June, July, and August. So there is an avenue where if council wants to increase the allocation of commercial space in the marina, because right now we don't have an allocation, like a restriction on different types of boats, we would need to embed that in the bylaw. Otherwise, we run into other agreements, such as our agreement with the PRPA.
So, but I'm still trying to get to charter boat operator comes from April to September versus what else and on some sort of discount fee, not in the bylaw now, and versus what I can get by renting it out day to day to itinerant traffic. How do I make more money for the city?
Day-to-day itinerant traffic will fill that space with 90 to 95% of
So
the time.
over the course of a year, who pays me more money for that same slip?
Itinerant.
By what kind of magnitude?
By well, this gets complicated. No, actually, no. An annual mortgage pays the city more. Will pay the city more, but by about $500 to $800 if they're doing like based on the occupancy of a marina. It's a hard comparison for what you're asking me because itinerant traffic during the peak summer months have about 95% occupancy in the spaces that we have for them. There's also other user groups, and then there's the heel months where other sport fishing boats fill in where the itinerant didn't during the summer. Somebody came in for the month of April and May, and then they left in June. We get a lot of those sport fishing community as well. Yeah, I don't know that I have a direct answer for
I'm going to
that
go to other
specific
councillors.
question.
Councillor 80.
Thank you. When I was reading through this, a couple of things came to mind. First one is around capacity. Some of what I'm hearing and reading is that in the summer months there's a great deal of pressure on a limited amount of space. I'm assuming that pressure is relieved in the off-season months. So I'm just wondering, in a long term, whether we need to be thinking in terms of adding to our capacity specifically to address the concerns of charter fishermen. So that's one question. I don't know if we want to do that and come back to me, or
I'll go to Dr. Buckley.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that is yes, and we are looking at trying to achieve that with the design work that's going down on the waterfront now.
So my second question, if I understand the situation of the charter people correctly, part of the problem is one of timing. They book up their schedules for the summer quite often back in the depths of winter, sort out who's coming, when they're coming. They get their schedule. They have a fee structure associated with operating a business under a certain understanding of what it's going to cost them. And that's all done. And now we're on May 5th addressing potential changes in that, which is right in, they're already done with their pricing and the money side of their business. So it seems to me that if we were to acknowledge the bad timing of making a change at this point, we could do that by deferring the implementation to January 1st of 2026. At which point they would be able to book next season's clients with the understanding that the fee structure has changed and build that into their pricing in a way that's not quite such a shock to what they might have anticipated in terms of their business case.
Director Vindelli, do you have any comment on any warning or whatever the charter boat operators had of a fee increase?
Yeah, I mean, I believe Robin has relayed that information to all operators in the marina.
Can you pull the microphone over so that you're...
I'll get Robin to confirm this, but my understanding is that he's made that aware to all the operators in the marina as late last year as well, or into the fall of 2024.
Some people received notification that this would be happening at some point, as early as the fall. But in January this year, when we opened up our reservations for summer bookings, it was communicated to them that what the current rate schedule will be for this summer, and that there would be a rate increase. We were anticipating earlier, but but that there would be a rate increase. Each charter member and only 3 of them inquired with me, but each charter member that did inquire with me was told that the rate I was expecting, the daily rate I was expecting it to reach would be $2.10 or $2.15 a foot.
Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, a couple things. You just admitted an annual rate makes more money than the transient. So why are we not allotting more annual rates? If the charter operators want to pay an annual fee, then they get that annual fee throughout the whole year. And then, so when periods of time when the marina's empty, now they would be paying for that slip, right? Whether their boat's there or not, to reserve that. So that's point one. Point two is in January, I believe most of these charter operators are already done all their bookings. You know, like it's kind of late, and you know it's going to be hard for them to recover any loss that they've already allotted their time to these clients with this is how much I'm going to charge you to go fishing this day, counting in fuel, everything else, variables sometimes they have no control over, but some they do. One was moorage, and then by January we changed the level playing field on them again. So you know they've got to know this rate change. They're probably talking to their clients coming here this year and that want to repeat business and come back and say, okay, yeah, I can book you for this date and this date this summer. So they've got to have some sort of idea in the summer before what the rate's going to be, not in January when they've already booked most of their clients.
Councillor, I encourage you to.
You know? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I know it's hard.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Well, no, wait, I'm not finished.
Okay.
And then, you know, you've got no commercial rate, but you have commercial vendors there. You know, you've got West Coast Marine Response taking up how many feet? 200-300 feet of dock? And, you know, I've heard that down south, these response organizations take their boats out of the water during the summer for some of the marinas to free up that space because they know its importance of that. You know, now are these guys are paying annual fees, not per foot rate. I'm assuming
per foot annual fee. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, like there's 200-300 feet of dock, and then you've got other you know and I'm not saying they're any less valuable as a client. I'm just saying that they're there and taking up a lot of space. And you know, for the turnover for an annual fee for a small boat versus a big boat, you know, it's by the foot, but still, it's just you know, and you know, like it's I don't know, like you know, I just think this loss of income is important. It's a sticking point. You know, these guys have already made their commitment to their clients, and now their profit is going to be taken away from them.
So let's get some clarity on those two clients, the Western Canada Marine and Response and West Coast Launch.
Yeah, so as was discussed earlier, that there's like 10 spaces that are annual agreements. 2 of those are taken up by West Coast Launch, and that was just because they lost their PRPA site for their businesses, and so we brought them over and gave them annual moorage for the slips that they are taking. WCMRC pays a annual rate for the months that they are the off-season months, and during the summer they pay a day-to-day rate.
They pay the day-to-day. Yeah. And how much do they occupy?
200 feet is a good. It's. I think it's a little bit larger than that.
Any other questions, Council? Councillor Niche, I see your hand. Is that new?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I just would like to know is, so out of those 10 charter boats, how many of them are on an annual fee?
Could anybody pick that up?
Did you get that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I understood the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. There's one annual charter that's on an annual rate.
Okay, so of all the charter, one got into one of those 10 slots.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
There were last year there were 3, 2 of them canceled.
Okay. All right, council. If there's no more questions, I would either call a vote or look for an amendment, or I'm just looking to you, council. Councillor Adey.
A process question, because Councillor Moreau is no longer with us. Would a suggested amendment take place now, or would it take place when it comes back as a bylaw?
Well, it could take place at the bylaw. Yeah. So we could vote this and then proceed. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. Very lengthy discussion. We don't normally do that. Thank you very much. All right, and we now move on to item 6C, which is the report from the manager. Wow, I got to get back to my. I've lost my place. The report from the manager of Communications, Engagement, Social Development, and Director of Planning and Development Services with regards to the Japanese Canadian Legacies Project and the Mariners Park design update.
Hello, thank you for your attention. I'm actually just going to direct it over to Andrew Lockhart, who is our architect for the project, who's going to be presenting the designs today. And so there's a report in your agenda packages that accompanies that and explains a little bit of the rationale for what's being done and a bit of an overview of work to date and consultations. But I'll just give it to Andrew in the, just in consideration of time. Thanks.
Take it away.
Okay. Pardon me. Okay, thanks, Your Worship and councillors. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. I'll do a brief introduction and then I'll pass it over to Ken Larson, our landscape architect, to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into the presentation. My name is Andrew Lockhart. I'm the owner and chief architect at Atmospheric Perspective. We're based here in Vancouver, but we've had the pleasure of working up in Prince Rupert with yourselves for a number of years, most notably working on Mariners Park, a number of different projects, but today we're here to talk about the JCLS Memorial, as well as the relocation of the existing memorial, the existing Lost at Sea Memorial. And so we'll speak to those two things tonight. Ken, why don't I hand it over to you?
Hi, Your Worship and Council. My name is Ken Larson, owner of Connect Landscape Architecture, again based in Vancouver, and we're supporting Andrew's team on the design of the Japanese Memorial and the Memorial Lost at Sea project. Thank you.
And worth noting that Ken's team was the landscape architect behind the Seal Cove project in town, so is also pretty familiar with Prince Rupert. So with that, I'll share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we're gonna dive right in. There's a couple introductory pieces that we'll speak to. We started working on the Mariners Park redevelopment project back in 2022. At the time, it was a project that was led by Tourism Prince Rupert. The city has since taken this initiative over. At that time, back in 2022, we had conducted a number of community engagement sessions, and these were the goals and guiding principles that came out of that sort of master plan redevelopment project, supported by the community engagement. So I won't read through them in detail, but I'll just go through the 6 titles. So the 6 guiding principles are to create a heart of civic life in Mariners Park, to support sustainability, to continue to develop local character, establish a strong connection to coastal life, and of course, a strong connection to Tsimshian culture. I'll go through these very briefly. These are just some historic images of the sort of settler context of the park. So you can see the evolution of the port adjacent to the park, and then the evolution of the land that the park is on itself, kind of where the road Manson Way was kind of cut into the escarpment. Also, some of the existing buildings that were located on the park. Interestingly enough, the location of the JCLS Memorial will actually be under where the Chatham House used to be located, sort of at the end of McBride Street. So kind of an interesting relationship there, because of course the Chatham House was used during World War II as the headquarters of the Navy base. Just a look at the location of the project. So the area where the project is located is going to be just behind 101 First Ave, the privately owned building there. So right at the end of McBride Street, sort of straddling the kind of two parts of the park with a really great view of the harbor. These are some images describing our sort of inspiration behind the look and feel of the project. So of course the project is largely a landscape intervention, but it will have an important sort of memorial aspect, which we'll speak to later. The reason we've included these images is because a lot of the work will itself be planting and what we call hardscape, which means different types of paving. So these are looking at a number of the different textures. Of course, you'll notice some photos from town, and actually some that are quite close to the site. So this is an overview site plan of the area. So just to familiarize everyone with the location, this is the end of McBride Street. This is 101 First Ave, and then the playground in the park is just over that way. So the main aspect of the memorial is actually down in this location here. But there's also a fair amount of work happening to improve the accessibility of the access to the memorial. And then there's a planting area around the memorial that will really kind of set the stage, set the tone for what folks will experience while they walk through that area. And then the other thing that we'll speak to at the end of the presentation is you'll notice that the JCLS Memorial is located in the location where the memorial walls are currently located. So we also have relocated the existing memorial walls over into this area of the park that I've highlighted in orange there. That's the Lost at Sea memorial walls. So with that, Ken, why don't I hand it over to you briefly just to speak to some of the landscape elements, and then we'll move on.
Andrew, do you mind if I jump in just for a quick sec? I've realized that we've said the acronym JCLS about 1,000 times, and we haven't actually said it out, and there's a bunch of people in the gallery who might not know what that means. It means Japanese Canadian Legacy Society. We received some grant funding to do a memorial project to recognize the Japanese Canadians that were forcibly removed from Prince Rupert and taken to internment camps, and their contributions to the community. So I apologize for not giving that context up front, and just wanted to clarify the acronym. It's the comms person in me. Thanks.
That's a good clarification, Veronica. Thank you. As Andrew mentioned, there are some issues with access and accessibility to get into the park. So we've tried to work with a lot of the existing features that are there. But if you could see my pointer here, this is the entrance off of the street end, and it essentially is set at a slightly higher grade so that we can avoid steep slopes and so on. So all of our pathways are under 5%, and they will connect to the existing pathway network. Because we're a little bit higher here, you get the great overlook to the ocean, but it's a very gentle step, a couple of steps down to a seating area and a lower memorial zone here. For people who have mobility challenges, they can take the gentler walkway around the outside edge. As we've used local materials rock and native plantings to create these symbolic islands to essentially enhance the symbolism of the area, but also to bring some meaning, texture, and symbolism, and just improve the overall visitor experience. As you enter into the memorial zone, you'll pass a interpretive sign describing the events of the internment and the events that happened to give some context to the internment story. And as you move your way into the memorial zone, you'll be it's a special planted mound with symbolic rock placements and a feature stone wall that Andrew will talk about a little bit later. So it's really a composition to work with the existing site, but add some context and beauty to this amazing setting. And the location is, you're always looking out at the water, so it's also a great destination here for visitors. I think, Andrew, maybe you want to talk about the Lost at Sea Memorial separately, as we got a few more slides on that coming after this. So I'll hand that over.
This is a view of the overall memorial. So you can see here the different areas that we've been pointing out, and you can get a little bit more of a understanding of the 3D qualities of the memorial. So like Ken mentioned, these two kind of platforms set the stage, and then folks wander down into what is a more contemplative area with this mound and stone representing the memorial itself. You can also start to get a better feel for the Lost at Sea Memorial, which wraps around the perimeter of the planted area and connects to the existing mariner statue, which is here. I'll speak very briefly to the approach to the memorial, and maybe just taking a few steps back, building on what Veronica said. I'm sure most folks here would be familiar with the Japanese Canadian internment, which is where Japanese Canadians were forcibly removed from the coast, relocated to internment camps both in the interior of British Columbia and in other provinces like Alberta and Ontario. So what we've done is created a composition of this planted mound together with this stone that cuts the mound in half. The stone itself represents internment, but on top of the stone is a very shallow water trough, which represents the Skeena River. Of course, a lot of Japanese Canadians were in Rupert because of the fishing, so the river is very important. Something that we realized when we were doing our research is that the Tsimshian word for Skeena River is Kishan, which, as far as we understand, translates into the divide or the split. So we thought that the stone, both representing internment with the river sort of on top, had this sort of interesting dual meaning. One of the other things that we found is that cross-cultural connection was very important with the Japanese Canadians story, linking with both other cultures and local Tsimshian nations and other local nations. So essentially the concept is that this stone splits the green mound, which represents the collective. The river on top also represents the people, the Japanese Canadian community. And the idea is that when it rains, the river will fill with rainwater. And at the ends, there are small spigots that allow that rainwater to drip off of the edge and recollect with the collective. So it's really this concept of resilience and this idea of kind of overcoming adversity. There we go. We're working with a local graphic designer, Rod Tasaka, who is putting together the interpretive panels that will explain the memorial and explain the internment events. This is a 3D view of what those panels will look like. So they're two panels that will be at the entrance to the memorial. And something that Rod came up with that we thought was really special is that the panels are split into two with a gap in the middle. And the idea is that the panels should be aligned so that you can actually see the memorial stone in the center. The gap represents the time that was lost due to the internment. There's a lot of detail here that we won't go into, but just wanted to show you what some of that is starting to look like. I won't go into this into too much detail here, but this is the an overall image showing some of the material selection, again, focusing on some of the native planting, a look at the different types of rocks that we're looking at using, and some of the pathway materials. So we're going to shift gears here a little bit to the Lost at Sea memorial wall replacement. We'll try and be very brief here. We want to give everybody a good understanding of the way the site will look, but just also want to acknowledge that there's also some really important memorials that already exist on the site. So we took a lot of care in redesigning that memorial to both, and maybe what I'll do is I'll just switch to here to our wall replacement project goals. So there's a number of issues with the existing walls, both from a long-term maintenance perspective and from a ability to sort of continue to add more names to those. So working with the city very closely, we've looked at a number of these issues and proposed a design that we feel will really improve a number of these challenges. We've looked pretty closely at the existing wall just in terms of what it says, but also the sort of the geometry. We understand that there are two parts. There's one portion that represents or that's a memorial to folks who have lost their lives at sea, often in the line of work, and another portion that is dedicated to people who loved the sea. And so the new replacement will include spaces for both of those folks. Here's a number of material precedents that we've looked at. We've really honed in on metal as a material here just because of the durability. The inspiration for the walls is the form of a fisherman's net. So you can see on the right that sort of diamond-shaped pattern, and actually flipping it so that it creates sort of a square shape, but a little bit oblique to represent the net itself. You can see sort of a treatment of what that's starting to look like on the bottom. A bit of a view into the walls here. So the walls are similar to one of the precedents where you can see it's an angled panel that's very easy to see. You don't have to kneel down to view any of the names. And the idea is that as you can see that there's some spaces that are open, those are spaces for future expansion as people want to be added to the wall. I will also note that the panel on the bottom is the panel that's dedicated to people who lost their lives at sea, and the panel at the top is the panel that's dedicated to people who love the sea. There's on the existing wall, about 2/3 of the folks are people who loved the sea. And here's a close-up view of what that's starting to look like. You'll notice that there's a couple different layers happening here. So on the base panel, there's actually an engraved, you can see the lines that represent the fishing nets. And at the joints in the net, there's actually a hole in the panel that represents the knots in the net and is a space for somebody to place a flower, sort of memorializing that person. And then you can see the pattern starting to take place. And the idea is that those silver plaques could be added over time by the city. And we're looking at using a technology that's easy for the city to source. Right now, it's very difficult to get those engraved bricks that are on the existing wall. And that's our last slide. So with that, we'll hand it back to Mayor and Council. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm just gonna jump in as well and say that just show some gratitude to the folks who came out to our Japanese Canadian engagement session. We did have an engagement session to kind of collect information from people in the Japanese Canadian community in Prince Rupert, and we also had an opportunity for kind of the expat community to reach out to us as well, because we actually had a lot of people from outside of Prince Rupert that had connections here submit photos and engage with us on this project. So that was great. And we also had a small focus group of folks who had prior involvement with the walls to those who lost were lost at sea and those who loved the sea to try to get their input on this as well. So thank you to everybody who participated in that process. It gave us a lot of really valuable input.
Any comments or questions? Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. If everything goes as we planned, what's the timelines? And second, the workforce, they will be hired local or they will bring people outside?
Manager Stewart.
So presuming that council is in support of the design as proposed, we will get our construction ready documents ready over the course of May, looking to June issue of tender, and then hopefully have construction in summer, fall. So with procurement, we'll hopefully get bids from local contractors, and we will always encourage local procurement. It just kind of depends on how we're weighing the different aspects of procurement.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Adey.
I appreciate the amount of thought that went into some of the artistic and aesthetic details of it. I was trying to picture in my mind where the Rotary Club band shell will be relative to this. I think I understand it. I'm just wondering if the site plan slide was put back up. Can we show where the band shell is likely to be as well?
Andrew, are you able to do that? You can kind of see where it is. It's a little bit off to the right of where the existing Mariner statue is, I think. But
I'll show it in two locations. So just an overview of the existing plan. The band shell is proposed in this location here, sort of right on that angled path. And if I flip to this slide, you can see that we would be able to see sort of the edge of the band shell here.
Councillor Adey.
Thanks. The only other question I have is around the degree of maintenance. I'm assuming the city is going to take on maintenance after the fact. It looks to me like it's relatively maintenance friendly, and I appreciate the materials being considered for the memorial wall being durable. Is there anything you'd like to add about the maintenance?
Manager Stewart.
just that we did have operations give input on, and they gave the same input that it should be relatively low maintenance. And so that's why hardscaping and local plantings and relatively low maintenance plantings were selected. It's actually, some of it will be lower maintenance due to the lack of mowing. Currently there's mowing of the area. So that's a consideration. We presented it to the gardening staff at one point just to get a little bit of feedback from them, and they were fairly supportive. So yeah, generally speaking, low maintenance materials were selected intentionally.
Any other questions? There's not a resolution required of us at this point in time. Dr. Buchan, did you want something from council?
I'll ask Director Stewart or Manager Stewart for her wishes on this.
It was more for information purposes, but obviously we want to keep council up and the community up to date on this project because it's important. So just kind of have your blessing. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you to our presenters. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, council. We'll move on to bylaws. Bylaw number 3663, with the recommendation that council give first, and I'm going to say second. I'm modifying this on the fly with everybody's permission. That council give first and second reading to the City of Prince Rupert's Fire Control and Protection Bylaw number 3663, 2025. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Adey, Councillor Cunningham. Is there anybody that objects to removing the third reading before we go any further? Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Adey.
I just want to make sure that we, since we're extending the time frame, that we don't impair the urgency. I think we need to maintain a focus on what I think is really important to get solved.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? I cannot see either of the.
I'm so sorry. I keep losing service.
Okay.
Mine's a thumbs up because there's not a voting yes. So
Yeah.
thumbs up unless you want me to unmute each time.
No, and listen, let's go by if you don't scream, we assume it's a yes. How's that sound? Councillor Adey.
That sounds perfect.
I would just like to add.
The motion passes.
I'd just like to add. I want to make sure that based on prior comments, that we not lose sight of the fact that although the situation may be one that needs fixing, the quality and efforts of the fire department are not in question. They do stellar work, and I don't want any of the passion of the discussion to take away from that respect that I have for them.
Excellent. Councillor Cunningham.
I echo that concern too. Like our fire department's going to respond irregardless, and to what ability, it's got to be determined. And like I said, with the players in the room, I think it's time we got together. And some of the players aren't here, DP and people like that, but I think it's all important that they get to the table and discuss this and bring an end to it quickly.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. I already did that. Twice in one night we approved the same thing. Thank you. All right, we go on to the Cow Bay Marina Fees Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 3662. Recommendation that Council give first, second, and third readings to the Cow Bay Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3662. Can I have a motion to that effect? Is that a motion, Councillor Niche?
It's a motion, and I'd also like to speak on it.
Yep, okay. I've got a mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adey.
I'll second it, but I have a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. All right, so I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Niche.
Yeah, I think being that the city was responsible for inviting people in to have slips in the long term, going away from the original, itinerant vessels, it was our choice to do that. And I think that it's kind of unfair to take that away. I think that although there might not be a lot, I think that maybe we should look at offering a few spots to people that if they are going to go on a yearly basis, that they still keep those yearly annual prices and not a daily rate during the summer. And whatever that number may be, I would think that, maybe 5 spots, because it sounds like maybe if we had a limit on that, of maybe 5 spots, then it's still keeping a majority of the operation open for itinerant vessels, but it's still, giving some people some certainty, considering that, and I don't think that we should just push them aside, all in the sake of a few dollars. But I do think that, we should raise our rates for the itinerant vessels to be more aligned with the rest of the province, because it does sound like that is a good portion of the revenue for the marina.
Okay, I'm going to try to repeat back to you. You were very garbled at a number of points, but I think what I heard you say is that you support raising the fees, and you think there should be some allotment of, I don't know if, we already have the 10 spots for annual. You were suggesting 5 spots, but I'm not quite clear on what that would be, and maybe somebody else heard it better than I did. But No, Dr. Buchan?
Your Worship, I didn't.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah. Go ahead. No. Dr. Buchan, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, I didn't hear it either, but I do know that staff are looking at bringing forward other amendments in the fall, and I'm wondering if, in the meantime, we can check and see if the funders have any issues with the idea of another 5 spaces, and whether we can address some of the other questions that have been raised. But I think, if council wants to go ahead with the bylaw as it's written now, we will be back for further opportunity.
Councillor Cunningham.
I heard Wade mention raising the transient fees, if I heard correctly, and I'm the one with the hearing problem. But, I agree that we've got to look at a way. I think this is a sports fishing town. It's a way we've got to accommodate the sports charters somehow, whether it's with increasing capacity at that dock or the plans coming up for the waterfront. I think it's very important. And, I'm talking more the local charter operators, not the guys that come in for 2-3 months and then leave town. These are guys that live in town, pay their taxes every year. The money stays in town, and they attract a lot of business. These people, the charter operators that are here right now, they bring their clients in. They usually fly in, stay at a hotel for a couple of nights, things like that. So they do bring a lot of revenue into this town. And I think we've got to look at ways where we can help and accommodate them. I don't think they should get a free ride, but at the same time, we should look at some way to accommodate them. And the fact that we're going to be changing the fees during their season when they've already committed to clients and a price, I find a little disheartening. I think we should try and find I don't know the answer to it, but if we're going to go to, I think Councillor Adey might have a solution to it, but I just think it's something we've got to look at.
Councillor Adey.
I don't know if I have a solution to it or just another thing to talk about, but we'll give her a go. I think that we should, well, there's a couple of things. One is if I'm to understand, there's more amendments coming into the fall. I suppose I'm a little nonplussed that we don't just we wait until, we should be waiting until we've got the whole package. And I would anticipate that some of these concerns would become a part of that deliberation that end up being the final amendment. So there's a couple of ways to go. One way would be to do what I had suggested earlier, and that's simply defer the implementation of the fee increase. We could do it en masse, defer the whole thing until January 1st. That will allow for the planning for the charter people. Or we could do that deferment specifically for just the charter people until January 1st to give them a chance to recalibrate their business for the following year. So that's what I'm going to suggest that we do with this.
Okay. We've got to figure out the mechanism for that. Is there, Councillor Nish, is that your hand again, or are you?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm in Kamloops and I don't know why the service is not that good. So what I was saying was that I feel that, we should offer, because it was the city that brought these charter operators in, a few years back, to take up a certain portion of spaces. I feel that, we should be leaving a few spaces available to some of these charter operators to continue doing what we had offered to them. We're whether it was whoever did it, we were ultimately, as the city, responsible for bringing them in, and I don't think it's fair to kind of pull the carpet from underneath them and start charging them a daily rate in the busiest time when, if they're there as an annual holder. So I think that or whether that's 6 months of the year or whatever it is. Maybe we make something for 6 months of the year. If they're willing to pay the rent for 6 months of the year, then we give them we give them that monthly rate. And like I say, maybe it's only like 5 vessels or something. That's kind of what my thoughts were on it.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate the clarity. Okay, we're going to craft something here, but I want to make my thoughts known, and then we'll figure it out. Listen, I'm a huge supporter of the charter fishing industry. It's actually an industry. It brings a lot of dollars into the town. It's never received the support that I think it should receive. It needs its own dock. It needs a place where people can go in and watch the catch come in, go down in the morning and see if there's an open space that I can get on, if whatever. I think that but that's for the future. This dock was built, and even though we brought charter operators in what I understand COVID time, this was built for the itinerants. It was built as a revenue generating opportunity for itinerant travelers, not for charter operators. And so every time we put a charter boat operator in there, we actually defy the purpose for which we built the thing. And I wasn't there when it was built, but I know that's what it was built for. And I'm frustrated tonight, quite frankly, because this is a revenue discussion, and we've been unable to get a single revenue number from staff. So staff, I got to tell you, I'm frustrated. Council has no idea how much it's costing them when they talk about moving this to that or that to this. And yet the purpose of this bylaw change is to raise more revenue. So I'm frustrated. That being said, I hear council's concern about the fact that the operators are operating under, they may not have had time to make the change that they need to make. Part of me says, well, then go to the other facilities. If you don't like the rate we're going to charge you, there are other facilities. They're not as good as ours. Hands down, they're not as good as ours. That's why they were built, to be as good as they are with showers and everything else, to attract itinerants who will pay a top dollar for every one of those spots. And so when we whittle away at it, we whittle away at the revenue that could be supporting the renewing of that infrastructure or the building of a new facility or whatever. The other thing, in that location, there's not the upland to support the industry. People who come to go out on charters come in cars and vehicles, and the charter operators have trucks and vehicles, and there's not, Cow Bay is constricted for parking. It's not the right location for a chartered operation. It is the absolute right location for itinerant traffic who come without vehicles and can walk to everything they need to walk to. So that's my synopsis of the whole situation. Dr. Buchan, I see your hand. Maybe you have a grand idea to get us out of this.
Your Worship, I'm going to suggest doing first and second readings only. We'll come back with a further staff report on wording around deferring the rates for the sports fishing charters only until a suitable time after this season. And we'll try to have some additional information about revenue implications of the different choices in the staff report as well.
So are you saying just defer the bylaw completely?
No, first and second readings, and then we'll come back with possible changes for consideration at third, based on the discussions.
That looks like it just got a yes all around the room. Councillor Cunningham.
As staff is going to come back with us, I'll give you a name that maybe you can talk to them about. They're one of the charter operators that seem to be involved in this. He's a local person, and I think they can give some insight, because he gave some ideas today to me that seemed like they might solve some of the problem too, but they're not thinking in the box, they're thinking out of the box, and possibly Robin and Paul and staff can discuss it. I'll give you the name after the meeting though.
Okay. So a motion, can we, Mr. Mover and Mr. Seconder, can we revise the motion to first and second reading? Councillor Adie says yes. Councillor Niche?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So the motion is now for first and second reading of the bylaw. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. All right. Council Roundtable, your input on items. Councillor Forster.
Thanks. I hope I don't cut out too much. I just wanted to acknowledge today is Red Dress Day, which was established in 2010 by Métis artist Jamie Black as part of her Red Dress project, which involved creating and hanging red dresses in public spaces to symbolize the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, as well as two-spirited people in Canada and the US. It's really become quite a powerful symbol, a call to awareness, justice, and action, and represents those who are no longer with us and those who are still fighting to be seen and heard as they continue to be subjected to disproportionate violence. I know many of us, I'm out of town, I'm away for my day job work, but I know people in our town created an active event where they could celebrate and recognize this day. And I just wanted to thank those people for recognizing those who aren't with us anymore. Second thing and third thing, I was lucky enough to be acting mayor last week and was able to go to the Indigenous cleansing and blessing of the land for the new middle school, which was quite a powerful ceremony and opportunity with the youth as well as many people in our community standing up and welcoming this new space. And also on that same day, I was lucky enough to join the celebration for the new police station, which had a bit of a personal touch because some of the police officers there actually knew my dad when he worked in Terrace, which is how I came to the north. So it was quite a wonderful opportunity. And I, again, really want to thank all the staff, contractors, and people that participated in that well predates my time on council. But a special thank you to Director Corinne Bombin, who's our Chief Financial Officer, for all the work that she did, as well as Manager Stewart for all the work she did in helping make sure that I was on time for things. Thanks.
Great. Any other comments? Councillor Adie.
Just a comment that there's people that have been sitting in these benches for the better part of 2 hours, and I know in my own experience that's a very long time. I appreciate that you put up with that. And I might offer that the only other place in town that feels the same way is the arena. So maybe we can talk about that one day in the future.
There you go. Well said. Hey, Councillor Cunningham.
Do we have it in the budget for cushions so we can
Yeah,
keep them here longer?
Yeah. Bring your own cushion. Councillor Niche.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the RCMP station opening, and you know, I also had conversation or heard conversation with people outside of the organization that were praising Ms. Bauman on her work on this file, and I also want to point out that we actually came in under budget, which is probably something that's so unheard of, especially in the north, when we build something. So that is wonderful news for the people of Prince Rupert who are not strapped with excessive borrowing to cover an overage, which we don't have to worry about. And secondly, I'm in Kamloops, down here watching the National Aboriginal Hockey Championship, watching some of the best youth hockey players from all over Canada, and here to support my daughter, Team BC, and they won today 11-1.
Nice. Congratulations. Two things. One is, if you've been going down 2nd Avenue, you know that you can't drive in one lane. And I wonder, Dr. Buchan, if I might turn to DCM Pucci and have him explain what happened there. DCM Pucci.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last night, about midnight, a vehicle struck the fire hydrant that was there and broke our water main. So we are in the process of fixing that. It knocked out water to most of the block, all the way down to Tim Hortons, but they got that back on for everyone for their Timmies. But we are still fixing it right now. We didn't lose water to the entire community, which is great, and we thank everyone for coming out, and that was part of that project. Thank you.
Yeah. The reason I raise it is, we make a big deal of the fact that we got the big project, and we raised $200 million, including $45 million of local taxpayer money through borrowing. And we're going to tackle as much of our aging water pipe infrastructure. You can see this example that's in the middle of the room here, and replace it. But while we're doing that very expensive work, we still get blowouts. We still have streets torn up. I'm hoping over time that as we replace more and more and more of the really ancient stuff, we spend less and less taxpayer money every year on just responding to wherever the pipes say we have to go to work today. And so I think it's important that people see every time one of those blow, that's tax dollars that could have gone into something much more productive, including replacing, whole sections of it. Because when you do the emergency repairs, you're spending a lot of money for a lot of overtime, often for a repair that needs to be eventually replaced when you come back and do the whole street. It just drives me nuts. And I want you to know about that. The other thing I thought I'd just let the community know is that next week there will be a ton of local government politicians wandering the streets. You may want to stay away, take your vacation, whatever, if you're adverse to local politicians. The North Central Local Government Association, which basically covers the entire province north of Quesnel, maybe Williams Lake. Does it go to Williams Lake? I think it does. Yes, it does. So north of Williams Lake, every local government that chooses to come will be here for meetings for 3 days next week, filling the hotels, the restaurants, and having good long sessions of debate about different policies. Councillor Niche, is that your hand one more time?
No, sorry, I forgot to lower
No, that's
it.
fine. That's absolutely fine. Just didn't want to leave it behind. Well, given that people's bottoms are probably sore from sitting in the benches, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Adie's, Councillor Randawa, all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Meeting is adjourned.